Good afternoon, everyone. Tonight is 4/13/2022. It's about 6:42 p.m. And I'd like to call to order the Columbus City Council regular meeting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would someone like to make the motion to approve the consent agenda?
So this is Janet. I actually have a couple of changes. So I'd like to suggest that we defer the motion to approve the 323 minutes. And since we just got those on Monday, I haven't had a chance to read them. I don't know if anybody else did. And the 2/9, because I have some significant changes that I want to go over with staff on that one. And then I also have some changes to 12.8, but I can just read those here. So I would move to approve consent agenda items number 3, 7, 10, and 11, and pull 4 and 5 until the next meeting, and then I'll make a change to number 6. So I'll do it as two motions.
Is there a second?
Yeah, this is Sue. I'll second.
I'll call for a roll call vote, starting with Shelley
Aye. Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
and Jesse. Aye. Motion approved.
Okay, so then the changes that I want to make to number 6, those would be the minutes from 12/8/21. Are that, and I just emailed these to Connor like 2 minutes before I walked out the door, so you probably haven't even seen it, Connor. I had sent these some suggested edits about a month ago, or whenever you sent those out, and then the copy that we got back had incorporated just the change that was made in adding the last name of the person, but none of the other changes, which I think was because what I was suggesting maybe he felt needed to be further discussed by the council, but I don't know. So I'm going to assume that that was why. So this is the two changes that I'd like to see made to the minutes. So this, the first one, if you have the minutes in front of you, which you probably don't.
This is the 2/9.
2/9.
Thank you.
No, 2/8. 2/8/21. In number 9 on the minutes, there was a sentence that said there was some question from the group about whether there should be a change to the language regarding pool covers before the council approval. This was during the Planning Commission report. And what I had suggested was to change it to read, there was some question from the group whether there should be a change to the ordinance requiring fencing around the pool by adding covers as an alternative to the fencing. So that was my first change. And I explained to Connor why I made that change. And then the second one had to do with the moratorium that we called on the dog kennel business. And if you remember, I think the discussion that was brought up was because there was a dog training facility concept that was before us, and our ordinance was silent on dog training. And our question was whether or not dog training should be under the umbrella of a dog boarding facility. And if you remember our discussion, we talked about different kinds of dog training. Some of them are the kind where the dog actually boards there and gets trained, and sometimes it's the kind of dog training that you bring the dog to, and some of the dog training centers train outdoors, like if they're training hunting dogs versus indoors. And so our motion was to include dog training facilities along with dog boarding facilities in the moratorium, and that was the change that I had suggested there, rather than just saying dog boarding facilities. So those are the minutes were, I would move to approve the minutes as written with those two changes.
Is there a second?
This is Sue. I'll second.
I'll call for any questions or discussions on her changes.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Jesse, aye.
May I ask a question too? Do we have to do a roll call vote now, since we're all here?
You do have to do roll call vote. My understanding with the statute is that For those at home, they may not know who all of you are, and so they have to be able to hear the roll call vote, and when it's a consensus vote, they can't tell who's voting. So when you do roll call, they actually can hear who's voting. So because we're doing Zoom, that's the reason why now, they call it interactive technology meetings now, that there are certain rules. So if you're doing a hybrid meeting, that's just one of the new rules.
Got it, thank you.
And stay tuned. They keep changing. So
It's
we'll
never
see.
boring.
All right, on to letter C. Is there anyone here who would like to speak at public open forum or online? Hearing none, we'll move on. Number 13, a planning commission report, and I believe Commissioner Behrens will give the report.
Good evening, city staff and city council members. For the record, my name is Bob Behrens with the Planning Commission, and I'm here to give an update on the Planning Commission activities from 4/6/2022. Other than the normal administrative duties at the last meeting performed by the Planning Commission, we specifically looked at a non-binding concept review plan presented by representatives of Blaine Brothers out of Blaine, Minnesota. In short, Blaine Brothers is proposing to move their truck-a-line business to the city of Columbus, specifically in the commercial highway district along Highway 35. This specific business entity consists of a full-service frame, suspension, and alignment services on both trucks and trailers. The purpose for the non-binding concept plan application was to determine if the proposed project met the criteria for the development in the commercial highway district. Prior to the Planning Commission meeting, the city staff had proposed to the planning commissioners certain questions related to the concept plan for this project. Number one, they asked us, regardless of the property location, is the proposed use consistent with the purpose statement and definition of indoor vehicle service and repair as indicated through the Commercial Highway District Ordinance. Number two, in relation to vehicle service business, when vehicles and equipment are waiting for their turn to be serviced and are parked outside, does this count as outdoor storage? And is it regulated through the ordinance for Commercial Highway District? Number three, is the proposed architectural design consistent with the design standards for the Highway Commercial District as proposed by Blaine Brothers? So we had a pretty lengthy discussion with city staff and also representatives from Blaine Brothers who talked about their project concept and also some of the criteria related to the ordinances that might apply to their business concept. And I think when we looked at the entirety of the project, the three properties that the developer were looking at were on the east side of Highway 35 along the Commercial Highway District. And we felt at that time that it would probably be a better fit for this project, this type of project, in the light industrial areas going to the south of the sites that they were currently looking at in the Commercial Highway District. So that was the crux of the type of discussion that we had. Are there any questions about the proposed business going into the Commercial District Highway Plan?
None for me. Anyone else? What else did you work on that night?
We also looked at further review of Chapter 7, Commercial Standards Ordinance Amendment Planning. And it was kind of a continuation of a project that we looked at several weeks ago, and it brought up questions about our ordinances in Chapter 7A. And here again, when we looked at the current concept plan for the proposed project. And so when we looked at all of that, there was a survey that was sent out to the planning commissioners to address and answer different questions related to exterior surfaces, masonry surfaces in particular. And we talked specifically about things like James Hardy board siding, veneers, and talked about those types of masonry products, whether they fit within the current ordinance for the city's term of masonry. And so we looked at a lot of different concepts. We talked about a lot of different items that might be proposed through changes in the ordinance. And so that was really a summary of what we discussed as related to Chapter 7A and potential amendments to the ordinance.
So then you guys did the survey and sent that back with Ben, right?
Yeah, we sent it back to Ben, and he took the accumulation of all of our comments, and he tallied up what our different viewpoints were on each one, and he was going to go back and put a report together that basically will be introduced to the city council for review.
Anything else that night?
That was it.
All right. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll move on to number 14, Park Board Report by the Park Chairman, Mark Daly, and it's pages 1 through 4 of our packet.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council people, members. Reporting on the meeting we had from March 29th, 2022. We're still working on the master plan. We don't want to spend a lot of money to have one done, so we're trying to do it ourselves. And we're still working on it, so that's going good. Then we don't have to talk about that. The public or park board also passed a motion to keep the proceeds from the Haggard Park sale in the park fund 404K to help pay for the future trail replacement. We talked about that. There was some talk about, somebody was talking about the maybe using that money somewhere else, or asking about it, so we thought it'd be important to take a vote on it and recommend that we keep the money in the 404K for the park trail project that's going to be coming up.
How long is it? How long until we expect we have to do that trail?
That's a good
Roughly
question.
5 years?
Thought it
10 years?
was 4 years.
Thought it was coming up
5.
quickly, wasn't it?
No, it's 7
Jim?
years.
I think we were talking in the next couple of years, but I don't remember off the top of my head, sorry.
Yeah. It's less than 5 years. So I mean, it's in the near term. It's not further out than that, because the trail is going to be close to 20 years old, because we put it in 2007. And I think when it was a 20-year life, or what we had indicated, that would be end of life at that point. I do want to let the council know, and also Park Board, that we have closed. And so we did get the proceeds of sale, and it will come back at your next meeting, because I wanted it to be able to show you the proceeds minus the costs that we had. And then at that point, you do have to make a decision as to where you want to place the money. The auditors do require that there is a motion that when that money comes in, that you basically tell staff where you want to put the money in and what fund. So I think what the park board is asking is that you put it in the Parkland Fund, But again, you will have the full discretion as to where you want to place it. It does not have earmarks. Bill's office did research it, and research came back that it's not earmarked, and you do have the discretion as to what fund you want to place it in.
And can you split it between two funds? Put half here, half there, or whatever?
Mr. Mayor and Council, yes, that discretion would allow you to split it between funds as well.
Yeah. All right.
So it's just a recommendation that we do that. You know, what you're gonna do with it is your decision, obviously, but if we don't say nothing, then you don't know our intents or wishes. Okay, and then we talked about, you wanted more info on the tree planting. We cut back way on the numbers of the trees. And we decided that we would like to have 9 maple trees, similar to the ones that are planted along the first baseline of the field, the main field. And 6 of those would be planted along the north side of Kettle River, on the north side of the walking path. And we'll take 3 and go on the other side of the south side of Notre Dame. I'm sorry, Kettle River, and put them along that ball field there. So that's 9 of those, and then we put 3, this is an oddball name for a tree, but it's a nice one. It's called the hackberry tree. They grow fast and they're very durable and they're good shade trees. So we want to put 3 of those near the ball fields where they have the events for the tournaments and by the swings there. So they give a nice shade for people sitting in the stands and the vendors, and when they set up the tents and such like for all the tournaments. So we did let's see, we did a cost on that. We got 2 bids, and Andrea actually had a good one. She went and talked to Abrahamson's, and their bid to put the trees in the first watering was $7,444.55. And that was the planting of all the 9 maples and then the 3 hackberry trees. So you have more specifics now. I didn't have that last time I was here, and we want to get going on this project right away. It's important to plant them in the early spring.
Did you say that there were 2 or 3 different quotes?
We got the other bid was from, Ben got that from, hold on here 1 second. It was a similar cost, but it didn't include planting them. And that was through Bachman's, I believe. Let's see, quote 1, quote 2.
And the reason I ask is that at $7,000 or $8,000 for 9 trees sounds like a lot of money.
But they're bigger trees too, they're not little siblings, you know.
Oh,
I think they were 5 feet tall, 5 or 6 feet tall. Let's see, I'm sorry about the other bid, I had it. Tree fence.
well, they're called number 25s or 45s, but what does that mean?
What's that, Jesse? The tree fence, no, that wasn't it. I'm looking for the first bid here in my paper. Okay, Bachman's had a quote for, that wasn't even it. Okay, they didn't have a total, they had just an individual one for different trees. Do you have that information?
No, that's why we were asking. The only quote we had was from Abrahamson.
Well, here it is right here. Ben got one from Bachman's in this quotation, but that doesn't include the planting, and I think it was 2401.75. And then he gave breakdowns of each trees. They had maple autumn glaze at $427.50 a piece. And let's see, 3.5, 4 inch in diameter trees, so they're $465.50. Then he had a swamp oak, which we're not gonna put an oak tree by the playground because of the acorns. And you can have this and pass it around if you want. I don't
The, for the quote, for Abrahamson was in there.
Yeah, I got the Abraham one, but that was fully, and that included first watering, I believe, too. And putting mulch around them and planting them. So that, the first bid from Bachman's didn't do anything but just buying the trees.
So this is Sue. I just have a quick question. So the Bachman's quote didn't include planting
No.
trees or watering?
Nope, nothing,
And-
just a tree.
Do you know if they would do that if you asked them for a quote that included planting?
Ben did, Ben's not here either, is he? Because Ben talked to him about that.
I have a question for Jim. Can't we plant our own trees? I plant my own trees.
We can plant anything. I mean.
That's the right answer. Good for you.
So we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think the thought process of the park board was to do a project, and kind of their own project, and if I'm stepping on your toes, let me know. But Ben and I have had some conversations. I don't really know how to explain this, but, so they started on a project, they asked me some questions. I'm doing a little bit of legwork right now, so that number 45 is obviously the size of the container. So the bigger the number, the bigger the container. I don't really know what that means for diameter trees or tall, but that's kind of what I'm getting quickly searching here.
Yeah, I got two.
So to answer your question, yes, we can plant our own trees at that point. It wasn't asked of Public Works to do that in the beginning. Jesse and I kind of had some conversations, or Mr. Mayor and I had some conversations earlier, and he asked that same question. Could we go buy them somewhere, and not go through a tree company? We can do whatever the direction is. It just wasn't necessarily proposed that way in the beginning. So kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, but yes.
Okay.
But they
Well-
also come in with a decent-sized truck with a spade and take out a big feet of land, move that and drop the new tree right in the spot. I mean,
Right.
so these aren't just basically 2-foot trees they're planting. These are nice trees they're gonna take off.
They're well established.
Yes,
So,
Well,
so some I
With the
noticed that,
guarantee.
with
Yeah, but-
that Abrahamsons too,
they're
is
good,
that,
good
that
quality.
it comes
and
with a 1-year warranty, and I think if we planted ourselves, we wouldn't get that.
You
No,
wouldn't
you
get
do.
that.
I've
Then if
bought
you- then you'd
plenty
have
of,
to dig up.
no,
and
you
all.
do. When you buy plants at any of the big box stores, they all come with at least a 1-year warranty.
Right, but you're still, Jim would have to dig that tree up,
Mm-hmm.
go get it and all this. This, they're responsible. They drop it off and it's all done deal.
Mm-hmm. The reason I was asking is now that we have the second, I mean, the difference between the two, and again, they're not proposing the same trees, but it's a $5,000 difference, which I'm assuming is the planting and the watering and the 18 bags of mulch, which is worth about $36 by what I pay for cypress mulch. So we want trees. I think that's a great idea. I'm just thinking might be able to send, and we just hired a third public works person, so we probably have people to do it.
So I'll tell you kind of what we talked about earlier too. Having Public Works do it doesn't come without a cost either.
No, I know.
It's just a cost that you're not gonna see. So, I mean, you look at a cost when you hire somebody, you see that number.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that it isn't gonna be that far off to have Public Works do it either. So, and I'm not saying that it's gonna cost us $7,000 to plant trees either. But if they're as big as what he says they are, I'm gonna potentially be out there with a backhoe digging it, cause I don't have a tree spade.
Right.
And the nuances are a little bit different, but
Well, I think that's the question, because we don't know what a number 25 or a number 45 is. A 5-foot tree can have a 1-inch diameter, or it could have a 3-inch diameter, and that's,
I can
Vastly
tell you
different.
that the row of maples that are out there right now, Public Works planted. And we planted all of those with a backhoe because they were large trees. And that took 3 of us, at that point, a week and a backhoe. So, I mean, calculate time and effort and not doing something else, is it $7,000? It depends on what we're not gonna do at that point too, so.
Well, it also depends on how big these trees are, which we don't know.
Right, I do not know how big a number 45 maple tree is.
Yep.
Yep, so I guess, is it possible to go back to Bachman's to see if they can add in the cost of planting?
Yeah, get Ben on that.
And then also find out what the number 40, how tall they are?
Okay.
Or what the diameter is, I think that's
Yeah.
probably because that'll tell you how mature the tree is and how big the root ball is.
I like the plan, though, and I just wanted to say one thing. I have a friend that lives in Forest Lake, and I introduced her to that park last year, and she loves it. And she said that she went there this winter, and that was the best-kept trail in all of Forest Lake in Columbus. She said it was awesome. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to get the information by the next council meeting.
Yeah, here's the park.
Because the goal is we got to get, if we're going to do this, we have to get them in the spring. We can't be planting them in June July and August. It's just another year without a tree. Okay, sorry I didn't have that information. We'll get that. And also the last thing on the list is we had a roundtable discussion. Elizabeth brought up that you guys were looking for a 6 to 8 person committee for Fall Fest or some kind of activities with the park. It was a unanimous decision that nobody would be interested in partaking in that. We just feel that unless there's a commitment from the city to put away money, to work with a budget, it takes too much time for going nowhere. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's the way everybody felt about it.
Could you repeat
There
that
was-
first, could you repeat that first part? Did you say that there was no one?
No one, zero.
No one wants to volunteer for the subcommittee?
Nope.
Okay.
Mark, there is a budget for Fall Fest. There's $3,000 put away in the budget last year. I mean, it wasn't specifically for Fall Fest, it was for events, but considering the timing, it would be the only one we could really pull off at this point in time. So I just want to say there was dollars put away for it.
Right, and then, if you can find somebody else to serve on it, we're not opposed to it, but there was some talk about maybe if you wanted to maybe reorganize the park board to maybe a Parks and Rec and give us a set budget. And then maybe we start doing some small activities like movies in the park, or maybe a food trucks here or there, or Jesse, you're familiar with this as market fest of some kind, or people come buy their vegetables or something like that. Start small and work our way up, but not. I worked at committee for many years in Fall Fest, and it takes an astronomical amount of free hours and so much time. And Elizabeth would know about that. Anybody that's worked it, it's a huge deal and a big commitment. And maybe Fall Fest is dying. I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe we have to look at smaller venues that don't cost so much, or maybe people be more interested in, like, many people talk about movies in the park. I think that's a great idea. Every other Saturday, have a movie in the park for kids or something. But nobody was interested in working the Fall Fest, volunteering.
Anything else from that night?
What's that?
Anything else from your meeting?
I'm sorry, Jesse, I still can't hear you.
Anything else from that meeting?
No, that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
I just found one other thing on trees. So a number 45 ornamental shade tree is 2.5 to 3 inches and 10 to 12 inches high. Or sorry, 10 to 12 feet high,
Oh, okay.
roughly.
Did you say that was 45 or 25?
That's a number 45 pot, so that would be for the maples.
Is it 445 or 4 to 5? Like 4-5 is what I'm finding.
I see number 45, but then this is the only thing that I seen at number 45. a lot of the other ones that I seen then went into gallons, so I don't know if a number 45 pot is a 45-gallon pot. I have no idea.
Well, we'll get more information, it sounds like.
Yeah, and what I'd found is like a 3.5-inch thickness trunk is 4 to 5 feet of root base. So that's a lot of digging with a backhoe.
Yeah, it's a pretty good size hole.
Mr. Mayor and council members, just another follow-up item from Mark's report. The subcommittee is going to be meeting tomorrow as a follow-up because there were several questions amongst different people that have come through me, and I felt that we needed to regroup, and so we do have a meeting set. I'm sorry, it's not tomorrow, it's Friday, to take feedback from the park board, figure out some maybe some implementation steps, kind of take a step back, figuring out what we need to do. So a meeting has been set. So I just wanted to let you know, we don't have anything for today, but we haven't met yet. But we will have a report at our next council meeting.
All right, thank you for your time, and I'll get that information about them trees for the next meeting. Sorry
Thank
about
you,
that.
Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
What time is that meeting, Elizabeth? Friday?
9 to 10:30. Yep.
Thank you. All right, moving on to number 15, lake drilling, building elevations. Come on up to the hot seat, man. We've got your elevations. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Would you give us your name, pull the microphone a little closer, and then give us names and address for the record, please?
Name's John Williams, address 5040 201st Place Northeast, Linwood Township, Minnesota, 55092.
Mike Meyer, 2277 Lehman Lane in Blaine, Minnesota, 55449.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, would you like to walk through this?
Sure. Welcome to our new council chambers. We, at our last council meeting, there was a presentation by the applicant for an amendment to a CUP because they wanted to expand the footprint to their building. They did have a conditional use permit issued in 2006, and it was a phased plan where they were going to build one building, and then 5 to 6 years later, they were going to build a second, which I'm happy to say that they are following through with that. So we're real pleased that they're having that expansion. During the 2006 conditional use permit, there was
Excuse me, it's 2016.
I'm sorry, 16. You're right. 2016. During that meeting, there were building elevations presented and a proposed plan. And now they're coming back because of the building expansion, and they had asked to look at a similar building elevation plan. And when it was reviewed by the Planning Commission, it didn't quite meet today's standard. So they're bringing back today before you a updated building elevation that will face the Lake Drive, and I'll let them kind of explain what their new proposal is, because I do believe this is the building is north-south, and this is the east-facing side of the building facing Lake Drive, which is on the monitors.
Correct, so what you have in front of you there is the newest elevation that we've come up with. That meets the city's code of less than 50% metal. That is the east side right-of-way facing of the building. So with that, that should have been the last check mark in the design.
And what happens on the south side? I see a little porch over the door, right?
Yep,
you-
that's a doorway entrance.
You had one door in the middle and a bunch of windows on top, or is that solid?
That's gonna have the same drawing that you've seen before. It's just not the right-of-way facing side of the building.
You have a copy of that? I don't have those papers with me. Easily accessible, I mean. And that's done in the red brick, wraps around that side too? Or not?
The brick only wraps in on the corner.
All the way around?
It will not be a whole side, the whole south side of the building will not be brick.
Will not be brick, okay. I'm just waiting to see it so she can remind me what it looked like.
I'm trying to recall, from looking at them elevations previously, is the south and north, is there like a 4-foot wainscoting?
There'll be 4 foot of wainscot on the south-north side of it. You're gonna have one door on the south would be the entrance to the building, and then there is approximately, I think it's 8 windows that will be there as well.
Yeah. I think only the main issue is the east facing, is what we had
That was
talked
my
about.
understanding of the city's code on that, is the right-of-way facing side of the building had to meet 50%, and that's what we met.
Is this the right, do I have the, is this your rendering from,
That's
That was the-
that's the rear side there.
That's the west side, which is,
So that picture there, you'll see that does show the shorter side of the building would be your south face. The
Yep.
longer side of that is your east face. The east face no longer looks like that though.
so this is what, this is what.
That's the change, okay. So anybody have any other questions or comments?
No?
I'm sorry, this is Janet, did you say that the brick just wraps around that corner? Because I thought that was one of the pictures we saw, or one of the options, was that you had it kind of on the corners of that, what would that be, the south side? I don't, east, south. Trying to orient myself. The front of the building, or the entrance of the building.
That it does wrap around.
It does wrap around,
But
so.
just into the corner.
Yep, that's what I thought, okay, thank you. Because so the front that you showed us, Elizabeth, it is going to look a little different than that because it wraps around that corner.
That's the very first render.
Yeah, okay,
So it does have about a 4 foot from the very corner of the building, goes in about 4 feet. That'll be brick from the roof line down to the ground.
that's what I remembered, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone?
No.
Good to go.
Thank you
Alright.
for doing that.
Mr. Mayor
Leading
and,
us.
oh, I'm sorry.
I was
Mr. Mayor
just-
and Council, we should have a motion to approve.
Yes.
Yeah, I can make that if you want.
Go for it.
Mayor? Okay. Move to approve the Blake Drilling Building Elevation dated 3/30/2022, meeting the 50% design standard as stated in the CI district.
I'll second that motion. Is there any other questions or concerns?
Do we need to say the east elevation, since it's just, we're only looking at one side of it?
It doesn't hurt. You
I,
could do that.
I just think for clarity, maybe we want to just, because I think the other, we approved the other 3 sides with our prior meetings motion, correct?
You want me to restate
Yeah,
it?
that's correct.
Yeah,
So I'll restate that. Move to approve Blake Drilling Building Elevation East Side dated 3/30/2022, meeting the 50% design standard as stated in the CI district.
And I'll second that. Again, any other discussion or questions? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye. Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Number 16, Parent-Teacher Organization Local Charitable Gambling Premise Requests, pages 5 through 9. So we sign this every year. This is requested every year, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't think they've had it a couple of years because of COVID, right? But
They had a 2-year hiatus, and so this will now be their year to have their bingo and raffles.
Are there any changes?
There's no changes. This is just a resolution approving the activity at the location. So you are approving the premise on which it's located, not the actual gambling license or activity. The gambling board will approve the actual permit. You're just saying for zoning purposes that you will allow gambling activity to happen at that location on these 2 dates.
Thank you. So I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 22-06, authorizing the Columbus PTO to conduct excluded bingo and raffles at the premise located at 17345 Notre Dame Street. Is there a second?
This is Rob. I'll second that motion.
Any other questions or discussions? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye. Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye. Number 17, proposed adopt a roundabout program, pages 10 through 14.
Mr. Mayor and council members, what I did here is I gave some examples of the Scott County program, MnDOT program, and Olmsted County program, just giving you some ideas. And really, this was an extension of our discussion from the Economic Development Authority meeting as to whether the council felt this was a direction we would head in for roundabouts, as I've been approached by some businesses that were interested in adopting our roundabouts, and we have 2 of them now in the city. And when I looked on the listserv, I saw different programs, and I thought maybe it could be applied, adopt a roundabout could be applied to. I saw adopt a highway program, adopt a restroom program, so I saw different counties and entities had different programs. If you felt that that was appropriate and you wanted staff to look further into it, to draft a policy and bring back what would be an application process with those policies or requirements outlined, we would move forward. If you felt that it wasn't appropriate in our city, we would just they would just remain grass as they are today.
Anybody? I think if we can draft something that, like Bill mentioned, we have control over, so you don't have dead palm trees sitting out there in 5 years from now. I think it'd be worth having a nice entrance on both sides of our city. And when we hear the cost of watering the trees and $7,000 to buy them, if somebody else is willing to do the buying and the decorating, I'm happy to leave them just grass. It doesn't bother me at all. But if we're going to have them fixed up and somebody else is willing to do it, and we still have the hammer at the end to make sure they're the quality we like, I'd say go for it. If you can draft a plan without reading 1,000 pages of things. And what does anybody else feel?
Yeah, this is Sue. I agree, and I think I mentioned before that it's worth at least looking into if you have, like you said, somebody who is willing to put the time and money and effort into making it look nice, and they get some recognition by having their name on the sign.
I have a question about watering. Is it self-watering now?
The roundabout on 23 has water access to it. The roundabout on Broadway and Kettle River does not.
So there's grass on it now, right?
Yes,
Well, how does that, I mean, we don't ever water it? It just,
never.
Oh.
Nature.
okay.
So when you say grass, that's a very,
Well, last year, I know I had to replant everything because of the drought.
it's green, probably 90% weeds, but it's green. So, I mean,
So this adopt a program is not just you plant it and make sure it looks nice and everything, it's a serious watering thing too, right?
I knew the roundabout, we intentionally put water access to the roundabout on Lake Drive because we had water, public water available. And I'm not sure what sort of design or plants, drought-resistant plants they could put in the northerly one. I know not every roundabout has water.
So the big nuances that we ran into, because we've talked about roundabouts for a long time in landscaping, is the amount of salt. So everything that you put out there needs to be somewhat salt resistant, otherwise they die off right away. So that was the hard part. We've done tons of legwork on different kinds of trees that are salt resistant, different types of plants, and the state was willing to help us out with some ideas, because they obviously do some legwork on things like that, but only one of them has water access.
And the people that are interested in them understand this problem?
Both of them do, yes.
Okay, then fine. I like the idea.
You could put cactuses on the one on Broadway.
Right.
You don't have to water them.
We got the sand.
Or nothing live,
Sandy,
put
yeah,
a-
just, exactly.
rocks and things.
So would someone like to make the motion?
This is Sue, I will make the motion. Move to approve drafting a policy and program to adopt a roundabout in the city of Columbus.
Is there a second?
This is Janet, I second.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
This is Shelley, aye.
Sue, I.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye. Number 18, North Metro Animal Care and Control Letter, page 15. This is a little bit of a challenge for us.
This is Sue. I have a question because I read through this and I noticed that in, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph, it says, therefore, effective June 1st, North Metro Care will no longer be providing animal control to the city of Andover. Is that, do they mean Columbus or?
I fear he has a fair amount of communities, and he was using the same letter over and over again and just forgot to put
Okay.
Columbus in there.
And then I guess what does that mean for us? Do we need to hire somebody else?
In this particular case, animal control provides two different services to the city when it comes to animal control. So the first one is if, it's animal control, so if there's a lost dog or a dog has to be picked up for any reason, stray, lost, etc., North Metro Animal Care and Control, we were able to call, or the sheriff's department was able to call, they pick up the dog, and then they would hold the dog, you know what I mean? And then if there was a place to claim the dog. They also provided services for kennels. So when we were required to do inspection service for all the kennel licenses, and we did those inspections, I want to say they're staggered, so we don't, say we have 15 of them, we would do, 5 each year, and we staggered them as far as looking at inspections. So animal control also did all of those kennel inspections. And in addition to that, this past year with the Muddy Paws, we further used those services for that type of inspection when we had daycare. So there are a number of different ways we have used animal control in our contract, and Mark Anderson was able to do all of those services, and he was happy to do them. And so I think this contract is going to be one of the more difficult ones to replace because throughout my years, there are not many services of this kind. And so I think there are going to be several cities that are going to have trouble trying to find an entity that will not only pick up the dog, but have a dog to keep, a place to keep them and pound them, and then also have the credentialing to do inspections. So unfortunately for us, we do have the need for this service, and you need someone who's qualified to make those inspections.
So how do we go about finding the replacement?
So this is Janet. I mean, I would recommend that we reach out to him. He knows who his, who compadres are in the business. He might be able to recommend another service, or maybe you'll actually have to think about 2 different contracts depending on how people split up their expertise. And if you'd like, I'm happy to reach out to him and ask him that question and try to find out a little bit more about what happened. I've been to his facility. It's really well run, and like, I know that I've heard from people about when they have called him and he's picked up animals, and the compassion and the care that he's taken with them and stuff. So I'm really sad that we're losing him. I think he was really did a great job. So if you'd like me to reach out to him and see if I can find out who might be a suitable replacement, I'm happy to do that.
I think that would be helpful, yes.
Elizabeth?
When we were there, they had, wasn't it deputies bringing dogs
Yes,
in?
from many different communities.
And it was in Andover. Where are those deputies bringing the dogs?
Well, they're going to be in the same boat as us.
They what?
They're going to be in the same boat as us, because those are the other cities that, like I know he did Andover, I think he did Columbia Heights. He did a number of different cities, and they're all, it sounds to me like he's closing up shop, so he's not doing it for anybody anymore. And if you remember, Shelley, they actually ran 2 separate businesses. It had his animal control business and a separate kennel that only housed animals that were picked up as part of those contracts. And then they had a commercial boarding facility. So I don't know if he's closing his commercial boarding facility. That was run by his wife. I actually boarded my dog there once, and it was really well run and really nice. So anyway, I'll find out what I can and see what he says.
Thank you, Janet. So I'll make the motion to accept.
Quick question. Elizabeth, what were we paying for this animal control service? Do you know off the top of your head? Like what per year? Is it like per month basis?
It was, he charged us on an hourly rate when we use services, so this was not a contract that had a flat fee. In other words, we didn't pay a monthly fee for the service. It was only when we use services. And I want to say it's less than $20 an hour, but on average, it was $500 a year.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so now I'll make the motion to accept the North Metro Animal Care and Control Letter of Discontinuation of Services and move to direct the staff to research what services are available in our area for animal control. Is there a second?
You going to direct me instead of staff?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's appropriate to direct staff, and then if the council member wants to assist staff,
All right,
because ultimately staff is responsible for it.
all right.
All right. Is there a second?
Yep, this is Sue, I'll second.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye. And now, would you like to appoint Janet and Doug Kitcher?
I'll help Elizabeth.
Engineer report. Kevin?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Kevin Bittner, City Engineer. First item on my report is report on what you heard last night at the workshop, exclusive of Councilmember Bush. The representatives from the county, Jerry Auger and Elizabeth Marcos, gave us a presentation on their analysis of our options for improvements to the situation we have at the intersection of Camp 3 and Kettle River Boulevard, and options for improvements, the safety concerns that are there. And basically this was a follow-up to our study that we did last fall with the county. And so they brought forth some options for consideration for moving forward with this project and potential improvements for the future. Those included both short-term and long-term concepts, and after much discussion on that, you, the council, are recommending 2 options. One is a short-term improvement, which would include
improving the sight lines at the current intersection of Camp 3 and Kettle River Boulevard. And that would include, in order to improve those sight lines, would require some removal of trees at the property on the northeast quadrant of that intersection. And so the initial emphasis there will be to initiate additional discussions with that property owner with the potential of purchasing additional easement area in order to clear additional trees to improve that sight line, and potentially also provide them with some additional trees as replacements for those that are removed. The second option also discussed and recommended is long-term improvements to the intersection that would include closure of that segment of Camp 3 between Kettle River and Lake Drive, construction of a roundabout at the intersection of Kettle River and Lake Drive, and other turning lane improvements associated with that. The first step in that process would be to apply for funding to help us pay for that improvement, and that would be, the first approach would be a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant. That's due June 1st of this year. It's a 2-year cycle for those applications. I did speak with Jerry and Elizabeth this afternoon, and they are going to procure their services of our Bolton and Mink Transportation Group in order to complete that application. And so I guess the action for the council would be to take a formal action on those recommendations that you considered last evening.
Mr. Mayor and council members, there, for the motion, I did not have the name of the grant, which is the Highway Safety Improvement. Is the Highway Safety Improvement also federal funding? Is that federal funding, that program?
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, so we would have to add that funding program, and also we will have to add the meeting with the property owners to negotiate acquisition of right-of-way for concept number 1.
So, being I was not there last night, I apologize. With option number 3, is that going to be at any cost to the city, or is that going to be the cost of the county, being those are both county roads, where that roundabout would go?
So the current action to apply for the grant itself, which is the first step, the county's going to bear that cost. If we do get funded, that's a $2 million max grant, and a 90-10 participation, basically 10% contribution by the parties, would be county and city. And yes, there would be a city component to that project.
Is there any estimate on how much, possibly just ballpark?
Without a grant at all, it would be a $250,000 city contribution to that project.
Thank you. I will say I'm only in favor of cleaning up that sight line. I wouldn't be in favor of these other option if it's at the cost of the city. So I just want that on record, so. I don't feel like there's a huge issue there, a few fender benders. I don't think we should be throwing a lot of money at something like that, so that's my take on it.
Any other discussion? Who would like to try the motion?
I'll make the motion. So,
Janet, sorry, quick question. So if I'm not in favor of number 3, should I be voting nay on this motion?
you might want to find out more about number 3 before you decide.
Let's hear it. I feel like this should be on council.
Well, I'm just saying that there was 4 different concepts that were longer-term concepts. The time frame was anywhere between 5 to 25 years. Part of what they were talking about was, the county works on a 5-year plan cycle of road improvements, and so, and this opportunity to apply for federal funding, if they were successful, could pay for, I think they said 90% of the total costs. They gave us what the estimate was for concept 3, if it were done today, with today's dollars, with no additional dollars, and it was like
2.7 million was the
2.7 million for
current
the total.
estimate based on
Right.
on that concept.
So I think the number that Kevin provided you was, if we got no extra funding, what would it cost us? But if they get the grant, that would be a whole different story.
Okay.
And I also think that what they said was that, with, over time, traffic patterns change, there may be other reasons that they might want to realign this, that they could tag this onto. So it was really approving it more from a planning perspective, rather than to say, we're definitely going to do it. And it
Okay.
allowed them to move forward with applying for this grant.
So it's nothing that's for sure, right? It'd be further approval down the road.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation, Janet.
So I'll make the motion then to move to approve moving forward with concept number 1 for the short term, which would include meeting with the property owners to discuss purchasing easement, replacing trees and/or a fence solution. And concept number 3 for the long term, for understanding that, with the understanding that Anoka County will submit concept 3 for it was HSIP, wasn't that what they called it, the HSIP, Highway something improvement?
Highway Safety Improvement Program,
Thank you.
HSIP, yeah.
Yep, HSIP federal funding grant in May of 2022.
This is Sue, I'll second.
Any more questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye.
The second item is the approval of the joint powers agreement between Anoka County and the City of Columbus. Mr. Ogier did explain that last night, but just in brief, basically what this is a required agreement in order to handle the funding, the grant funding associated with the West Freeway Drive project. The city has acquired basically 2 grants. One is the LRIP funding that was reallocated from the original 2017 project, and also the State Park Road Account grant. And so because the city is not, has a population of less than 5,000, it can't manage those funds themselves, so they have to have a pass-through agency. Typically, most cities look to their counties to be that pass-through agency. And so with that, it requires a joint powers agreement between the city and the county. And so approval of that will allow those funds to flow to pay for engineering, construction, and all those other costs associated with the project.
All right, I'll make the motion to approve a joint powers agreement for the Northwest Freeway Drive in the City of Columbus project 2021-03, Anoka County Contract 0008574. Is there a second?
Rob, I'll second it.
Are there any other questions? Or questions from Kevin? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye.
No further
else?
report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Kevin. Attorney's report.
Mr. Mayor and Council, Elizabeth and I have been in conversation with the receiver who's been appointed by court order to take over the St. Clair Lakes project. The reason is there's a divorce settlement that wound up in court, and so the receiver is in charge of taking those assets and essentially liquidating the assets on behalf of the petitioner in that court proceeding. What that means for the city is we've got Joshua Markham Homes ready to start construction. In fact, there was a construction meeting held yesterday. We were just informed, I think on the same day or the day before?
Same day.
Same day of the receiver being appointed. We made it clear today in discussing that with the receiver that no construction was to occur on the site until the city had the chance to review the documents, to make sure it doesn't put the city at risk, and to get assurances from Lake Elmo Bank, who issued the letter of credit, that they will stand by their letter of credit notwithstanding this change. So that's all kind of in play. I wanted you to be aware of it because as you drive by, you see they're ready to start. In fact, we heard that an excavator was going to come out on the site and drop off earth-moving equipment. So I made it very clear, Elizabeth and I, in talking to the receiver, we need to catch up with you on behalf of the city and make sure that there's no risk posed. What they'd like to ultimately be able to do is move forward under the receivership model, the court appointment, so that they don't lose time with the excavator and so forth. I think that could be okay as long as we can get assurances that the city's protected by the bank's letter of credit. And then ultimately, the council will have to approve the assignment of certain documents to Joshua Markham Homes, including the development agreement. But if you understand the concept, the receiver is stepping in the shoes of the developer by court order. And so their position is until there's a change in the ownership of the property, meaning Joshua Markham Homes takes down more lots, they should be able to move forward under the existing documents. And I would agree with that as long as the security is in place to keep the city in its same position. Okay, so if the bank says this receivership appointment means we don't have to stand by the letter of credit, then everything stops until we get that fixed. So probably the first two steps, the first main steps are to make sure the bank is going to stay in the project and they'll stand by the letter of credit, and then ultimately within the next 30, 60 days, the parties will be coming to the city to assign those documents to who's essentially the home builder.
So this is Elizabeth. So essentially what happened is St. Clair Terrain Company held some assets. They went to court and there wasn't any monetary assets. So the judge ordered the liquidation of the company, because the company had land assets. The management company that was assigned, which is the receivership, is the company that is a liquidation company, and that's what they do. And so they're the in-between company, and Markham Homes now has a purchase agreement with them to purchase the rest of the property in order to get the dollars so that the judgment against Jamie can be paid off. So it is a little bit complicated in the big picture. My concern, and when I was calling Bill, was the city receives a letter of credit to ensure all the improvements are made. So we want to make sure that that letter of credit and the bank is standing behind that letter of credit. Because if they're not, then if they start the improvements and they don't finish them, the city will have to. Or you would end up leaving a development half done. So that's why we want to make sure that that letter of credit is in place and the bank will stand by that letter of credit.
In my experience, it is actually better for the wheels to keep turning because there are lot buyers, there's homes to be built. Joshua Markham Homes would like to build homes. So the less delay we can impose in that process, the better for all the parties, including the city, frankly. But we also want to take a reasonable amount of time to review documents and to make sure that security is provided.
So how much of a delay would this be? A week or 2 weeks or a month?
In terms of, the bank has already reached out to me.
Okay.
So it could happen very quickly. I want written assurance to the city that the letter of credit's not going away. And I want the bank to put that in writing. Otherwise, they've talked about the builder securing other financing. Well, that's fine, but that will take weeks and months. So the best outcome is Lake Elmo State Bank stays with the project and backs its letter of credit.
And who does the road building and the sewer building? Because Markham is a house builder, right? Does he contract somebody else to come in and?
Essentially, Markham would stand in the shoes of the developer and would contract with the excavator and the builder of the road, the sewer, the water.
Got it. So it could move along nicely if the banks want to play ball.
Correct.
And it's best for them, best for us. Yep. Well,
I have a question. So one of the big concerns I had was, and even if everything had gone as planned, was that sort of responsibility that the developer had for the HOA and all of the requirements that the DNR was putting in place. So my understanding, if I remember correctly, was that we were responsible for enforcing that they followed those DNR requirements. My question is this builder aware of that? And is the builder set up to do those two things? Because it seems to me if he fails, they become a city problem.
Mr. Mayor and council member, yes, the builder, as I understand it, is aware of the requirements. Now the builder will be responsible for those requirements in the first instance. We are the regulatory agency that has to make sure that the builder and others follow through. But one of the things that would happen to this assignment of documents that has to be approved by you as the council is we would have the opportunity to make doubly, triply sure that everybody's aware of those requirements and bring them, back to the fore.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine a council meeting 30 or 60 days from now where you as the council make the same comment, so, with the folks sitting here.
Yeah. You can count on it.
anything else, Bill? Mr. Mayor, just additional comment too to build on Bill's comments. It was apparent at our pre-construction meeting yesterday, which was a little bit unusual given the circumstances of just finding out of the change in ownership, whatever, that the representative from the Joshua Markham Homes has a little bit of catching up to do on all the requirements. So, but it appears that he's willing to meet all of those requirements, so.
My question was, it doesn't sound right, this Joshua Markham Homes, were they the original home builder that the individual St. Croix Terrain said would be building the homes? I don't feel like that's the same name.
I won't say it was the first builder, but it was the second builder that he negotiated with. When, a couple weeks ago when they closed, Joshua Markham Homes pre-bought 6 lots and then had first right refusal for the remaining lots. And so Jamie had, or the applicant had the ability to sell to another builder if he chose, if Markham Homes decided not to further build in the development. The way the purchase agreement reads today is he will take ownership of it all.
The court approved a first amendment of the purchase agreement that essentially does that, says that Joshua Markham Homes will buy the remaining 15 lots and take over the development in its entirety. And so that, in that sense, I think it's a good thing because we now have one entity to deal with if everything goes through.
Perfect, yeah, because if I'm thinking back properly, Jamie had said he would turn over 1 lot a month to the original builder, and as they sold off, he would turn over another lot to him, so, yeah.
So within,
So this individual's grabbing 6 right away with the intention of doing the next 15, was it?
that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I will also say that yesterday I was also handed an amendment to the conditional use permit during the construction meeting. So it is the intention of the new builder to amend the CUP. The amendment is a small amendment, but nevertheless, amendment that has to go through the process. And what he wants to do is, there's a 30-foot setback to garages in this development, and he would like a 25-foot setback to the garages, as he feels that the extra square footage in the garages and in the floor plans will be an advantage to selling the properties, and he can build a better product. And so he's going to be coming before you for the amendment with 4 different floor plans, because if you remember, when it came through, there were no building design plans before you. So we do have that application. When Ben gets back, he'll start to process. So that will come to you in the next coming weeks.
So all he wants-
When they come before us, and we're going to mention that HOA deal, that was because the DNR was very strong in their wording. Can we have a copy of that available at that time to, because,
It's attached to everything. We made
Okay,
sure that it
okay,
was
'cause
an
I-
exhibit to the development agreement, that it was a standalone, that it's an exhibit to the HOA documents, but absolutely, we can put it on the screen, we can point
Yeah.
to it, but we did make sure that it's in all of the documents.
Okay.
Yeah, there are 7 documents that went with this plat, which is very unusual. Usually it's 1 or 2, and there are 7. So there's going to be plenty of assignments going on.
And now you get to redo every one, correct?
I think
In-
it's just an assignment, isn't it?
It could be an assignment that has all of the documents attached. We did explain to the receiver, because I'm not sure the receiver was aware of this, that the DNR, once approved this development, and they approved the replacement development, the DNR will have to agree to the assignment of the settlement agreement and development agreement, because they're party to that settlement agreement. So, that still is a wild card. We expect that the DNR is not going to stop a project that's under construction. But that's a wild card for the receiver, for Joshua Markham Homes. So we don't control that agency.
Elizabeth, did Jamie make it through all of the Rice Creek requirements? Or were there still things left to do on that?
Yeah, and am I trying to think of the representative from Terrence, from Rice Creek was at the meeting yesterday, and I believe everything was in place for the Rice Creek permit, so.
Okay.
And just so for the council, the DNR was present yesterday at the pre-construction meeting. That's one good thing about Zoom. We do have more attendees because they're able to Zoom in during the meeting. So we did have representation, and I think there were some things that came to light that the developer will have to put in place. And he had agreed at the meeting to do so, but it was, I would say, news to him that he had to do certain things. So I think Wes was pretty strong in his language as to the must be done, and I think it was understood that there are some things that they need to do.
I should also clarify that Rice Creek will also have to amend their permit for the new ownership, so.
I guess one last word, since we're kind of piling on here, but I am going to make sure that the costs of all of this extra work are borne by the developer, meaning the successor, because we're not going to get any money from the former developer since that development company is being liquidated. So we'll be tracking costs, and those costs will be borne by the developer, as would be the case even without the receiver's involvement.
Can I ask a hypothetical question? Hypothetically, if a developer who worked with the city and got approved a project and then went through a bankruptcy, which I'm assuming that's what this is, created a new company and came to the city again, would we be obligated, or is there a path forward that we don't subject ourselves to such a risk?
Mr. Mayor and council, any party who has an interest in property is free to make an application. We have generally not had, and I'm not really sure of any city that looks into the financial viability of a company, but it's why we obtain a letter of credit. And I actually had in the case, I'll just say that Love's wanted to provide a performance bond because they probably do in other states. And we said, no, it's the practice in this metropolitan area based on the city attorneys, kind of talking amongst themselves that we don't accept performance bonds for this type of thing. We want a bank letter of credit that we can present and draw on and not argue with a surety company over whether, we've met the conditions. So the answer is we forget about the financial solvency of the company because that's not our jurisdiction, if you will, but we replace that then with the letter of credit. These letters of credit are significant. I mean, they're often over 600 to $1 million and up. So that's kind of how we cover that, but I don't know of any city that investigates the financial wherewithal of an applicant. They just accept the application, process it, and then apply the same conditions to every applicant.
I'm thinking even beyond just the financial, just the crazy, circuitous, creative things that we went through with that developer, and then how it ended up. Is there? I mean, I know you can say no for lots of different reasons related to our ordinances. Can you say no based on prior experience with that person? Company, even if it's a new company?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I have not seen that done. And so, we always love it when a developer comes and is experienced and has a great team and, has hired the right consultants. But we also have done things with some of our own property owners and residents that are kind of back of the napkin. So we just try and kind of meet each of them as they come through the door. And I do want to clarify that there was not a bankruptcy proceeding. So the receivership was because there was not assets. Without liquidating the company, there weren't assets to pay the judgment in the divorce decree. So I don't think there was any bankruptcy proceeding involved. So I just want to clarify that. But yeah, it is. We have struggled over the years with different folks who apply, different applicants, but we've always tried to kind of, we work more with those who are less experienced or are a little unorthodox.
So
put it
if there's a
mildly.
proven track record in this city that has shown, negligence and I'm not talking, I'm inexperienced. I'm saying, we aren't giving information to our people on time. It's costing us extra money. We're not, Elizabeth didn't charge him anymore for all the things that he did. And what I'm saying is at some point, can't you, say we're not going to deal with this individual? If somebody comes in and does a permit, great, but this guy is not going to, because we've gone through this and it's been, a trial. And I don't care how much money he has or whatever, he's cost the city money. And why would you have to then do business with that person?
Mr. Mayor and council member, there's the fundamental due process. The government owes each party fundamental due process. And so you cannot say, we won't accept your application or we won't deal with you because of prior experience. Now, if they do something criminal, if there's something, criminal in the way that they deal with us in their application, commit fraud, for instance, I would say that would be a very strong basis for denial of the applications, okay? But we have to accept their application and take them through a process.
Missing deadlines and that is not considered criminal.
No.
Could you share examples of what would be criminal? Just for curiosity's sake.
Sure, if somebody represents to us that they have land control, they have a purchase agreement with the owner, and it turns out that all they have is, and they submitted something that's a fraudulent document, absolutely, I would have no trouble, and let's be clear, that hasn't happened in this case, or in the hypothetical case. But if someone did something that misled, the council and the city on whether they had land control, or whether they actually had a tenant that they said they had, or they were going to assign it to, let's say the apartment project has a developer, but they're going to assign it to a different owner, and they commit fraud, absolutely, I would say that is grounds for turning down their application, because they're not actually meeting the application requirements. I could certainly investigate with other city attorneys that do they have a the times you see economic component are like when you're giving tax increment financing to a project, like the case on the freeway. I think that's our only TIF project, right? Absolutely, you should be able to look into the financial capabilities in that case, because you're actually using city tax money to bolster that project. And so that's when you see an inquiry into the financial capability. If you're granting a liquor license, which is not a right, but actually is discretionary, it's considered a privilege, not a right, you can look into the capability of someone holding a liquor license to actually run a business, because the public safety concerns if they would not be able to meet those standards. But in the case of a land use application, every owner of property, and you consider someone who's got a purchase agreement, they're not entitled yet, but they have a possessory interest, they have other interests, they have a right to make an application, and we have to take them on, we have to look at the application, each one, give them the same shake, even if we have some prior experience.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mayor and city council members report. Shelley, I'll start with you.
I have nothing.
No report.
Janet?
I have two hopefully short things. One is that I was asked to participate on a steering committee for I don't even know how to define the group. It's sort of a loosely held group called Everybody Belongs. And Shelley, you will remember this because we went to that implicit bias thing, and it sort of at that point was being sponsored by Forest Lake School District. And from that series of events, they created a sort of a community group. Maya Bain, God, I can't think of her name. Mayor Bain from Forest Lake is on it. There's a city council member from Scandia, some community people, things like that. So the purpose of the group is fairly broadly defined as just trying to promote engagement in the community with an eye towards inclusivity. And there's no sort of agenda or strong, list of to-dos. They're still trying to figure all that out. So I'm just letting you know that I've been sitting in on these meetings. They're right now weekly by Zoom. And the person who's been running it has been primarily the superintendent, Superintendent Massey, which I think he would like to be able to have somebody else do it, but right now I think he's the only one who's willing to. So that's an FYI. The second thing is I had forwarded an article from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune from a few weeks ago to Elizabeth and Bill and to Jesse that explained or that had reported that from the federal infrastructure bill that there had been a number of earmarks that had come back to Minnesota in different districts by different senators and House of Representative people. And we had talked to Representative Emmer's staffer about whether or not earmarks were allowed, and he was going to get back to us, but did not. So I'm bringing it up just as an FYI, but also because in our own staff meeting, we talked about a follow-up to that information. I'm aiming this at you, Bill, whether or not it would make sense to reach out to Representative Emmer's office and also Senator Klobuchar and Tina Smith, all who have brought back earmarks for various different projects to Minnesota, to ask whether or not there may be an opportunity for a second set, or how we might keep our toe in this pool, or maybe it's too late. Looking for some advice from you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I think that's always a good opportunity. You know, last spring, there was a bill that allowed earmarks for the first time in probably a decade. And then the infrastructure bill did not. I think the one that got approved that was in the Star Tribune was the budget bill.
They refer to it as the infrastructure bill,
Okay.
but I mean, it could have been just a mistake in reporting too, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah. In any event, I think it's a good idea, and what we might learn, even if there isn't an earmark, is how we move to the, because not all the money was earmarked
No, that's right.
by a long stretch. I
Right.
think, you know, in these election years, as we're looking at a new election cycle, the opportunity for earmarked is an opportunity to bring home money for your constituents, but that isn't the last dollar that's available. So particularly Klobuchar's office has been really good with broadband. And we just need, you know, council direction, you know, as a council. So if you can give us that direction, you know, we're happy to follow up. And what I had said previously is we can facilitate some phone calls, some meetings. You know, I don't want to propose a big legislative program while we have one going on at the state level, because, you know, just whether you have the appetite or not, I don't think it really makes sense until we find out there's an opportunity. If through a phone call or meetings or some follow-up, we find out that there is in fact an opportunity, then we would bring a proposal to actually, you know, bring people in from our government relations department.
Okay.
So if that makes sense, you know, I'm happy to pursue it.
Well, from your experience, I only care that we get a response and that somebody wants to help us. So whether or not we have a higher chance of likelihood if your office does it, which is far more experienced and knows the ropes and who to direct it to, or if some little podunk council person does it and they feel sorry for that podunk council person and wants to try to, all I care about is that we get some of that pie.
I can tell you that, you know, that's the whole basis of government relations, and you guys are, in a sense, in that arena, being elected officials, that it's all about relationships. And
Yeah.
these folks have worked together in various political offices or on the Hill, or, you know, they travel in the same circles or read the same tweets, you know.
And your people have those connections.
Yep.
Okay.
And we have a federal office, which we didn't have a couple of years ago, and so that's kind of raised our profile in federal matters. And we were successful. The reason I mentioned last May is our firm was successful in half a dozen cases of earmarks. But, you know, it was a big effort at that point.
Right. So then I would move to direct our city attorney's office to inquire with Senator Klobuchar and Smith's office and Representative Emmer's office to determine whether there's an opportunity, whether there's a second round of earmarks or an opportunity to still have some of those dollars directed directly to the city for broadband.
Is there a second?
I'll
Anybody?
second.
Any questions and discussion?
So this is just exploratory, we're not.
Right, yes.
We're
Yep.
not betting the farm yet.
No big budget to approve, just some phone calls, some hourly work.
Well, and I don't want to impact what we're trying to do, because I really want that one.
Different set of group, that's state, this is federal that you'd be reaching out to.
Shelley, everybody has cell phones. They can use one on each hand. Oh. All right, so any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote, starting with Shelley.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye. Start dialing.
Okay, thank you.
That's the end of my report.
Rob.
I got a couple things. So I've recently been meeting with a group. It's made up of council members from across the Twin Cities, a few Bloomington, Coon Rapids, Richfield. It's an organization called City Leaders Against Wage Theft and Tax Fraud in all our communities. We're going to be putting on an educational workshop April 23rd in St. Paul. Some confirmed legal enforcement panelists are John Choi with Ramsey County Attorney, Nicole Blissenbach with the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, Jonathan Ferris with Fraud Bureau, and Madeline Lohman with the Advocates for Human Rights. Like I said, this is made up of city council members and mayors across the Twin Cities. So I wanted to let you all in on it. If you'd be happy to attend that, I could send that invite out to you. It's on Saturday the 23rd.
What time?
23rd from 8:30 a.m. to noon is check-in, 9 a.m. to noon program. So it sounds like it'll be a legal enforcement panel that'll be there, and I'll be opening up that event. Another thing is I was reached out to by the Parent Advisory Council, a gal named Jen. This is a Forest Lake Schools organization. They were wondering if Public Works would be possibly interested in a big rig day, it's called. So far, they got David's Hydrovac coming, one of our employers in town here, the city of Forest Lake, as well as Wyoming. It is on a Saturday. I know that might pose a problem, being that might be overtime or something of that nature, but I wanted to bring it forward to see if that would be something we'd be interested in doing. And then one other thing was I was over at Muddy Paws, did do a tour on the progress that's going on there. It's looking very nice around there. I don't know if anyone else has been over there, but they came up with a good solution to the impervious doors and the kennels and things. So it's nice to see that shaping up around there, and they're following what we asked for here from the city council. So that's all I got to report.
Thank you.
I'll tie on to Rob's report quick. I did get an email from, I'm assuming that same lady,
Okay.
about the big rig. We talked about it at Public Works. We generally don't shy away from things like that. We go to Columbus Elementary, we do things around. I shied away from that one a little bit because it was in Forest Lake. As a general rule of thumb, I thought about it a little bit, and I thought if it was in Columbus, I wouldn't even have thought twice about it. I would have just did it. If the city council feels that they're willing to have whomever's on call that day attend that event with whatever they want for a piece of equipment, we're more than willing to do things like that. So,
What is it? What's the big rake?
Yeah, so it's for students that attend Forest Lake schools, one being Columbus, typically youth, younger, and they get to explore the vehicles, see what they're all about, talk to the operators of them, and things like that. So just community involvement, mainly.
Growing our next Public Works Director?
Very well could be, yeah.
you never know.
What are the insurance risks and something like that?
I'm not gonna lie to you, I've not ever asked the League of Minnesota Cities about it, because it's always been at the school or an event that's on site here. So I've never ran down that road to see what the legality issues would be, which is kind of why I shied away from it a little bit on a Saturday, non-work event in another community, which is why I just kind of washed my hands of it. And we responded to her saying that, you know, if it was in Columbus, we'd be in, but being that it's in Forest Lake, we were out. We can do some legwork on it if you guys want us to. If you don't want us to, no harm, no foul on our end.
They have lots of big
I would
equipment in
say
Forest
let this
Lake.
slip by.
I think the benefit risk is too, I mean, you know about the insurance thing, and
You're taking the equipment out of the jurisdiction that's insured, so I imagine it's gonna be some sort of rider, because we're not insured in Washington County in another city, we're insured in Columbus.
okay, I ran a pet a horse booth at the Minnesota State Fair for 12 days, just so that, and the horse was behind a gate, you know? It cost me $500 just for,
The riders, they do charge you for a rider for a day, you know what I mean? And even when we have events here, there are certain events you have to get a rider too, because it's outside your insurance, you know? And so that's the whole reason, because in this event, what if they break off a mirror? What if they, you know what I mean, on the way over there, you know what I mean, they get a flat tire. I mean, you're not doing city work.
Well, and what happens if a kid, you just said climbing on something and the kid slips and, breaks out his front teeth? Aren't you responsible, the
Well,
person
that's
that?
why you would get a rider, right?
But, yeah,
That's
but I
why
mean,
you're
it's
right.
not just the,
I agree with you.
it's the personal, yeah,
So,
no.
So then I'll ask the question, are we comfortable with doing it in the city limits? I don't get a rider, we just do it. So,
You have something coming up that you're thinking of?
well,
Or
I mean,
just in
we've done the
general?
trick or treat thing. I personally go out and buy a bunch of candy, and the public works guy who's ever on call goes out and hands out candy, and, we have, I don't even know what we brought there last year, a dump truck probably. But it's at the school. So, I mean, I felt comfortable doing that. I run it by Elizabeth. We don't generally ask the council. I mean, it's just kind of
Is
one of
it a
those things that
straight
we
time
do.
thing or overtime or how?
yep. So
They get paid, yes.
You're just giving out candy, or you're bringing something there for them to climb on?
We bring equipment there, so,
Okay.
so who's ever on call, one guy, will bring a piece of equipment there.
I don't know if they climb on it. I mean, they may take up a step too, but it's more about the candy and looking at it's more of a look and
Yeah.
see than let's climb in the truck.
Yeah, I was at that event, and I don't believe that. They just had the door, Tim was there last year, Bill was there the year before, Bill was there the year before that, I think. I was at all 3 years, the
Right.
last 3 years. And they usually just have the plow truck there, and like last time, David's Hydrovac had like 6 different of their trucks there, which was really cool, right? But, yeah, there was no climbing on it or anything, so.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I sit through a lot of council meetings, and they often have videos of when they just made their vehicles available for kids to see or even climb on. City's much bigger than ours, but I think it would be, two things I think would be helpful. One would be just to confirm that that's covered within our jurisdiction. That's just a phone call to our insurance trust, our insurance providers. Then we would know that even within the jurisdiction, we're covered. But also, even tonight or some future night, you could adopt a policy that, that makes that line, so that when Jim gets the call, he can say, the council's adopted a policy that we do this within our jurisdiction because we don't have additional costs. And then he's not the bad guy, and you've got a clear policy, and
Yeah.
Other than that, that'd be the end of my report, so
Sure.
I guess it was.
Okay, Jim, you're up.
Okay, as you know, every time I have a report, as a general rule of thumb, I'm gonna ask you for something, and this is no different. Every year, generally, this is a discussion that we have around budget time. So I start doing legwork to see what lead times are and what costs have changed and things like that. On our 2023 equipment plan, we have a road grader up. The reason that I'm asking tonight is because it is a 9 to 12-month lead time to get a road grader, which would mean if I ordered it today, potentially in April of next year, I would take ownership of it, or we would, as the city. The other reason why I'm here to ask tonight is because the cost of this road grader is going up substantially. I was informed that they were gonna have at least one more price increase this year. You can take that with a grain of salt. Isn't there going to be? As a general rule of thumb, I got bids on it in 2020 for budget purposes. A 3-year buyback, or sorry, a 5-year buyback plan, that piece of equipment was $333,720. I did not do that option for this year, but the 7-year was $341,060. A 7-year buyback plan in 2022, which is the current pricing, is $370,500, or $250, sorry. So it's went up $30,000 in 2 years. I have no reason not to believe that it's gonna do that same thing if we don't move, you know what I mean? So I guess what I'm looking for is your approval to say yay or nay. You can order it knowing that there's a 1-year lead time on it. If it miraculously came in September, we don't take ownership of it till next year anyways. It is a 2023 expenditure for us, no cost out of pocket until that year. I can get into more detail if you want more details, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it.
Can you remind,
You need an answer on this tonight.
I would like to order it sooner than later because of that lead time.
Jim, this is Janet. Did you, you have to remind me, you've been accruing for this?
Yes,
And
we,
so-
we have the money for it.
Okay.
So I mean, it's not like I need to raise the budget to
Yep.
do it. This is in our,
Even for the potential increase that you're anticipating?
if it goes up much more than this dollar amount, then potentially we need to have some discussions or we're probably out, but we can cover this dollar amount.
And was the plan always to try to put an order in for next year? I mean, that was sort of when the
I would have asked you this at budget time, so September, October.
so we're just a few months ahead of schedule?
We're just
because
ahead of
okay.
schedule because of the lead time. So
Okay.
if we would have been talking about a skid steer, no big deal,
Mm-hmm.
because they make more of those. And it's a smaller machine, they're more popular than a road grader. So road graders takes longer to build, it's a lot bigger machine, it costs more money.
Yep.
They don't sell as many.
Okay, thank you.
How old is this, the one we have currently?
2011. So I'll give you kind of the backstory on that one. So the last handful of road graders that we've bought, and we've done a buyback program.
Yep.
That last road grader, we did not do that. So we bought that one, the 2011 that we currently have today, as a 5-year buyback. What that basically means is we buy a warranty for the 5 years. If anything happens, there might be some deductible or something of that sort, but if anything major happens to it, it's covered under warranty. You're responsible for maintenance, tires, things of that sort, wear items. We opted not to renew that one, or this last city council opted not to renew that one. So we still currently have that one. It's a fine road grader. I mean, it's not like I'm worried about, an engine blowing up or anything like that, but know that if something of that sort happens, then that's our cost.
Right.
So the general rule of thumb with big equipment, we do the buyback program. I use that terminology, buyback program, meaning that they give us a price and they also give us a price that they will buy that other one back for if you meet those parameters. So if it's in good shape and you're inside of those hours, they guarantee that number that they have on the paper today. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head.
102,000.
I didn't give you that sheet. So if we did a 5-year, 3,000 hour, the buyback would be $168,000. If we do the 7-year, which is what I'm proposing, it's $150,000. And they guarantee that. That doesn't mean that it couldn't sell for more than that. It doesn't mean that we couldn't go sell it on our own and try to get more than that. It doesn't mean that we could just keep that one too. So you're not locked into anything. It's just a guarantee program that they have that people use because it's easy for budgeting purposes.
This is Shelley. I don't understand the gross trade allowance at 102,000. Is that,
That's what they will give us for ours today.
okay, and is that locked into some of these agreements, or can you work magic and get more for it somewhere else?
I magically could get more for it somewhere else. So my intent would be once we get closer and I know that ours are in, Forest Lake Contracting has bought the last handful of road graders that we have turned in because they know that we do our maintenance, they know that they've been under warranty, they know that we take care of it, we wash it, they are good machines, right? So contractors like that will buy them. It would be my intention to go there and talk to a couple of local contractors and say, I have this. Are you interested? And I already know that Ziegler's gonna give us $102,000 for it. Anything more than that is a bonus for
Right,
us.
okay.
So
Jimmy-
that's always my intent.
And the sell price from Ziegler isn't contingent on a trade-in? I mean,
It is not contingent on a trade-in.
Okay, good, thanks.
Oh, nice.
And let's just say that the sky falls. We, as a hypothetical, I am not signing a contract today or tomorrow to buy this either. I'm telling him that I want it for this $370,250. And our name is on that, City of Columbus. If something crazy happens that, 2 dump trucks break down and we spend all of our money on something else, they just sell it to someone else. So the key for me is you guys say yay or nay, and I order it just because of the long lead time.
And the guaranteed price.
And a guaranteed price, right? Because if we order it in October, it could be another $20,000, $5,000, some number.
I don't, I may be misremembering, but I thought that you had it budgeted at 400,000. Is that because of a tax? And I swear, because I remember having a
believe the
heart attack seeing
I
$400,000.
looked at the sheet and it was $350.
Oh, really?
$350,000 is what I had on there.
Okay.
So in 2011, in 2020, when I did my sheet, you can see that it was $341,000. My 350 covers that, right?
Yeah.
So every year I try to update that, or, every other year, whatever, just so we know what those costs are. But their costs are increasing more and more every day at this point. I mean, you hear contractors talking now that, and I've gotten bids on things that the bids are good for 2 weeks. Normally, they're good for, 30 days. I've seen 2 weeks. I'm guessing some people see, a week, or could be daily depending on what you're ordering.
Well, I say go ahead and order it, as long as it's non-binding,
Okay.
correct?
Yeah.
And hopefully the sky doesn't fall.
Yep.
So should we get a motion for that?
Yes,
Okay.
something of that size, you bet.
So I'll make a motion that, what are you gonna ask them for? Or,
Okay,
A
I'll
quote?
make the motion and you
Yep.
can just say it. Motion to approve the, I'll call it purchase of a 150, M150 Caterpillar road grader from Ziegler for the 7-year buyback price of $370,250.
is there a second?
Yep, this is Sue, I'll second.
We'll call for any discussion?
Is it the
Shelley, you're
purchase or the
looking pained.
order?
Huh?
Well,
Shelley-
Should the
Shelley-
motion be the purchase or the order? They're different. Purchase sounds like you're writing a check to me.
so hypothetically, I'm not writing a check. So we can do order or purchase.
Sure,
What-
let's do place the order.
Okay,
Gives us a little bit of wiggle room to back
okay.
out.
Okay, so the order's been placed and it's seconded again.
Yep, this is Sue, I'll second.
And I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye.
That is all I have for my report. Thank you.
It's all you're going to get, too.
That's all I'm gonna get.
All right. Connor, you're up. Sorry. Public Communications Coordinator report.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, you will recall that on March 28th, an email was sent to you about the newsletter that has been budgeted before, if I remember correctly. It's just sort of a lot of questions that were sent out. Just wanted to get you guys' consensus on what you envision this newsletter looking like. The results of that are included on a memo that was distributed at your desk. I can just read down the results. 3 or 4 responses indicated a mix of past and future developments. So we want to look at both things you guys have approved and have been constructed. We want to look at construction and things that you have approved that are upcoming in the future. All felt that the newsletter should focus on city government. Thank you. items, with 2 indicating that should be the only focus. And we could also include some community aspect as well, 2 indicated that. Our main reason for a quick discussion tonight, and hopefully Councilmember Bush can be a tiebreaker of sorts. The timing and frequency of the newsletter was the most contentious result. One thought, Mayor Prana thought that a publication in late summer or early fall was best, while Councilmember Hegland pushed for a biannual letter coming out in spring and fall. A recap of the start of the new year with quarterly updates from Councilmember Logren. Councilmember Wagman preferred a letter in spring and or autumn. She was open to one or two. So it's a lot of things you guys were in mostly agreement about, which was good. But it's that last one, that stickler of frequency in a year and when it comes out, that I would like to pitch to sort of a final open forum for you guys to discuss, and then we can start working on that plan going forward from there.
I guess my question is, how much effort do you think it's going to take to do one? That might dictate if we did 1 or 2 per year.
So I guess that was the last one that I didn't read off. All 4 of you mentioned that you liked for respondents that I got, where it was a mini newspaper style, right? So we're not diving really deep on 1 or 2 stories. We'd be highlighting 4, 5, 6 stories, and it would be 2, 3, 4 graphs per story. So with enough lead time, I would optimistically like to think in 2, 3, 4 weeks, just sprinkling it in here and there, it gets composed. And then after that, it's just getting it sent off to a publisher or a designer, whatever we need to do to get it pushed out, because we also want to send it out by mail as well as electronically. So we do need to look into the publication and the publishing appearance of it all. So, but as far as like my creation on my end, with it just being sprinkled in among other work, I don't imagine it being a truly heavy lift.
Okay.
We were going to piggyback on, Lori buys a mailing list each year, and because we send out the recycling newsletter that she sends out, so that budget, purchases the ability for us to buy bulk mail and do things by bulk mail. So this newsletter could go out using that same mailing list and using that same process.
So what does it cost to send out one to everybody, roughly?
It's about $1,400.
And that would be similar to Lori's?
Yes, if you were looking at a bigger, you know what I mean, a bigger, we talked about the fold out and the full, you know what I mean, we talked about that size. If you were thinking bigger, then of course it's going to cost us more postage to do that.
Right.
And I'll just clarify too, when I suggested twice a year, I acknowledged that we only budgeted for 1 this year, so I wasn't looking to do 2 this year. I was looking to do 1 this year, but then set it up going forward as maybe twice a year. And kind of see what the feedback is.
That's true. That can also play into it as we move forward.
Yep.
And in light of the fact that I said that I wanted the quarterly, but I also
One
said
was
I
a
did
big
not,
one, and,
I did not want to mail it out.
That's true.
Okay?
That's true.
I would change that to, twice a year or whatever.
And if that's what you want to do, if you want to stick to twice, with only 1 being mailed, and the second one, we have a fair amount of email addresses. I mean, a fair amount of the community would get it emailed, and it would be on the website. It just wouldn't be in the U.S. mail, you know what I mean, in the mail.
Well, and I think if you do a mailing, you could also, put in that same sort of opt-in option that Jessica has used in the past, where people can opt in to get it electronically or to give us their mailing address so we can add them on, on a sort of, I think that's how we've done it, is if people have given us their mailing address, we'll mail to them if they prefer to get it that way, but we would only do a whole city mail once, because who knows how many of them actually read it, and they don't just toss it in the recycling bin. So, I mean, you could do that too, and that would make it more targeted.
Okay.
Yep.
That would be one good story in there. If you or someone would like to receive this through email, send in or call in your, explain all the options to them again, but we did get quite a few.
Yeah, I've gotten a number of people emailing me saying how much they like seeing the minutes, seeing the council coroner, seeing the whatever. So I think the people who actually gave us ways to get it to them are reading it, and that's good. That's what we were hoping, so.
Yeah. Answer all your questions, or do you have more?
I believe so. Other than when do you think you want to go out? Because it sounds like we've landed on one printing, but when?
I suppose
I'd say,
August or July. Give us time.
well, if you were thinking spring and fall, then however soon you think you could get it done to still hit spring, that would keep you on that cycle going forward. But if you don't have time, then maybe you shoot for something closer to end of summer, beginning of fall.
So target spring and fall, but the one, you would rather have the one mailed in spring?
The only reason I was thinking that is because, fall, sometimes there's a lot going on in the summer and the spring and stuff, but I guess in the spring I was thinking, you had all winter, which is pretty slow, that you might be able to kind of dig into things and look in, do research if some of the topics needed research, or you might have actually more time to actually put it together, and that's why I was thinking, but I'm not wedded strongly to either. I think if they get anything, they'll be happy, because it'll be better than what they've been getting in the last few years, which is nothing.
Okay. We can push towards spring then, and then if that proves to be an obstacle, I can return to you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for doing
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
No problem, guys. Yeah, other than that, I have no further report.
May I ask you one other question? So Elizabeth had mentioned that you are doing some work on the website.
Yes.
And writing some things. Can you just give us an update on that? And actually, what I'd love is if you let us know when there's new things on there to look at. That would be great, like as part of your report.
Yeah, the most recent article that was written was about bears, which might seem silly, but it was only a few years ago that there was a bear about 20 miles west of Columbus. It was just sort of mostly just talking about prevention techniques to keep bears off of your property, or at least from causing a disturbance. I actually just today received a press release from the Metropolitan Mosquito Control. That may not be their official title, but I was planning on having that posted to the website tomorrow or Friday. Just trying to keep the community up to date on some of these. Maybe they aren't government things all the time, but things that impact the community. And I think bears, when we were outside the city, and mosquitoes were in Minnesota, they impact us, right? And so, and then maybe in a week or two, it becomes one that's more government-centric and things that are impacting people that way. So
No, it's great.
just try to do at least one a week, and we'll move from there.
Do you want to add another idea to your list?
Sure.
So when we had the Anoka County Sheriff here a few months ago, we talked about maybe highlighting something on our website that would give them some good PR and exposure and things. And so we had, if you go back to the minutes, Jessica was her name. I can't remember her last name.
Jessica Slavic.
Yeah,
Slavic.
the lieutenant.
Lieutenant Slavic.
You could reach out to her because she was our contact for that. But one of the things, and Elizabeth and I had talked about this, that we used to get from them annually was sort of a crime report. They just would sort of give us sort of like, here's all the things that we saw happening in Columbus. And I don't know if they still do that or if that was part of our, it seemed to me like they had something you could distribute to the public. So that might be a question to ask her, but also just, what would be a way that we could kind of shine some light on them, and also inform our residents who does, because there's still people who don't know the Anoka counties, our police enforcement. So,
Okay.
but no rush on that, just add it to your list of topics.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Or you could add it to the newsletter.
Yeah, that too.
Could be a twofer.
Yep. Thank you.
City Administrator.
Mr. Mayor, I have one thing on my report, and that is, I want to say it's probably about 5 years now. that Anoka County has had the Economic Development Program, which allows cities, if you are a participant, to use the services of Samantha Markham and her group. And it's a voluntary cost share program, but Anoka County does require you to sign an agreement. And it would cost the city what did I say in my motion? $237 this year is the cost share in order to use those services. So my recommendation is that we sign the voluntary cost agreement and to use the services of Samantha Markham.
So I'll make the motion to approve the voluntary cost-sharing agreement for Anoka County Economic Development calendar year 2022 in the amount of $237. Is there a second?
Yeah, this is Sue, I'll second.
Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. What does that entitle us to? And, when we had the woman before, I had a meeting with her about branding and that sort of thing, so I assume that was covered. But they also provide information at the Anoka County level for, what we're known for and that sort of thing. If we didn't pay that, would they just drop us as a city? As far as that information?
They wouldn't necessarily drop us. I think the county has always been a good partner. I just think that it's not as readily available. In other words, when I call Samantha, she she tries to do everything she can because she knows that we are part of the group. Okay. And we have those services. Again, if we didn't pay that, because it's a $20,000 budget, that's how she's able to do a lot of the activities that she does. And so if cities aren't willing to participate, what's going to happen is the position's going to go away, and it wouldn't be funded.
Any other questions? I'll call for the vote.
Shelley, aye.
Sue, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
Jesse, aye. Anything else, Elizabeth?
I do not have anything further.
All right. So now you have to walk me through this again, Bill. We close this meeting, or do we just turn the lights down?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, we'll have a closed meeting. You'll make an announcement. I always recommend that you read the announcements that follow so you don't have to reopen the meeting after the closed meeting. So if you want to read your announcements and reminders, and then you can read the notice that's under 25.
All right, so announcements and reminders are Planning Commission on April 20th at 6:30, City Council meeting on April 27th at 6:30, LBAE meeting 4/28 at 6:30, and the full calendar's on the back. So now I adjourn and read that, or just read?
No, you read it before you adjourn.
Okay.
And then
So now we'll have a closed meeting under Minnesota statute section 13D05 subdivision 3C3 to develop or consider offers or counter offers for the purchase or sale of real and personal property. And this regards the 182nd cul-de-sac purchase of easement.
that'll do it. And you're not adjourning.
Okay.
You're closing the meeting. So it's the same meeting, but now closed.
The meeting is now closed.
Yep.
And for Natalie, I know you're listening in, but our Zoom meeting will now end. And so I just wanted to let you know so that I'm just not turning you off.